Joining me now, former Senator Cory Bernardi in Adelaide and Daily Telegraph opinions editor and Sky News Outsiders co-host, James Morrow on Skype. Gentlemen, before I get you into debate and chat all the international goings-on, I want to play you what US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has had to say.
What we do know is we know that this virus originated in Wuhan, China. We know that there is the Wuhan Institute of Virology just a handful of miles away from where the wet market was. There's still lots to learn. You should know that the United States government is working diligently to figure this out. But what we really need, Martha, we really need the Chinese government to open up. They say they want to cooperate. One of the best ways they could find to cooperate would be to let the world in, to let the world's scientists know exactly how this came to be, exactly how this virus began to spread.
Well, there you go, Cory Bernardi. It doesn't sound like so much of a conspiracy theory anymore.
Well, that's true. I mean, we're loath to leap on these things because people say you've got the tinfoil hat on. But when the United States says there are very real question marks and they raise pertinent points like there are bats in this research facility, patient zero still really hasn't been identified publicly, and it's entirely plausible that it was a worker there that was infected and transmitted it. I'm not going to buy into this as a biological weapon because if it was, it would be, the mortality rate would be 60 or 70% rather than
I agree with you there, Cory.
that it is. Yep, and but it's entirely plausible that it could have been used for economic advantage, and we know there are lots of people saying that this is being used to further political causes, particularly in Europe, and the Democratic cause to damage Donald Trump. So, you know, we've got to have an open mind, but we know it all goes back to China. China is as guilty as anything in this space and needs to be held to account.
I think right around the world, James, I think people have been woken up about China for some time, but they're getting braver about speaking out about China and the extent of the economic compliance, I guess, that we have brought ourselves into, the constraints we've allowed ourselves to get because they feed us in terms of economic dollars, that we've lost our voice in standing up to them. I think we're getting braver. Certainly we have in Australia, like I've never seen in the last 12 months. In all of this too, you've got these global bodies. We've talked about the World Health Organization. There's a myriad of them. Do you think this is going to translate to us doing something about reforming them?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, the World Health Organization, just to take that for the most prominent example, you know, they exist entirely to prevent pandemics like this from spreading and getting out of control. And here they are. What are they doing today? They're in all of our Twitter feeds promoting advertisements about why we shouldn't drink our way through our quarantine during COVID-19. So, you know, it just shows what a useless joke they are. But I just want to go back to what Cory was saying a minute ago. There were reports this week, too, that State Department officials had visited this Wuhan lab a couple of years back because they were doing research on exactly these sorts of coronaviruses, and they were alarmed at the lack of security that was at the labs and how the samples and so on were being treated, how everything was being done. And they sent back really alarmed cables to the White House. So there's more and more evidence coming out around this. Now, as to the point about dependence on China, it's like there's a preference cascade going on. And it took everybody, just one person to say, you know, maybe this isn't such a good idea. And suddenly everybody is putting up their hands and saying this isn't such a great idea. I'm hoping that out of this, Australia, the United States, free-minded, free market countries can unify on this idea that we can trade with one another and we can depend on one another, but we cannot depend on a totalitarian China whose goal is world domination.